Hey, listen, I this program is starting to turn into what we'd call a one-trick pony. The topic being Trump taking over the country again, and the beginning of fascism and the ending of democracy in this country. And every time I turn on the news or I listen to a commentary that supposedly is directed at the seriousness of not allowing this orange bastard to be president again, I don't get the sense of urgency that I feel, that a lot of people feel. You probably feel it. There are some commentators, especially online, who are not mincing words about this. Steve Schmidt is one. There are writers for the Associated Press. There are writers for MSNBC who are trying to let us know the seriousness of what we're facing. And it just seems like media are not paying the kind of attention to this that they should be. And if media are not, then the people are not. And I get this empty feeling, this sinking feeling, this tension in my gut that this is really going to happen. I'll transition to Steve Schmidt, who had a few comments this morning at his what do you call it? His Substack website. The Warning is what it's called. And he quotes a line from the AP that I mentioned, I think, last week. And the line from the Associated Press is this: Trump hints at expanded role for the military within the U.S. That's it. It's a ludicrous headline. It's a disturbing Associated Press story, but the headline is such bullshit. It sounds like Trump's plans for martial law is going to be nothing more, according to the headline, than a vast expansion of the Toys for Tots program that the Marines get involved in every year at this time. But the story that the Associated Press put out, and I think I covered it with you on this podcast, it's about the Insurrection Act that was written in 1792. And that act would give Donald Trump complete freedom to deploy what is the world's most powerful military on your main street, on my main street. Now, it's important to note, and we've talked about this so many times, and I'm sure you have talked and thought about it too, that the merger between fascism and dissatisfaction is necessary for free people to willingly trade in their liberty. The merger between fascism and dissatisfaction, which is what happened to the German people, the Italian people, in any country that was ostensibly a democracy, or if not a democracy, then a constitutional monarchy. What has happened in the past is when dissatisfaction, whether it was a global depression, whether it was a defeat in a war, whatever it was, where the population is so dissatisfied, so upset, so angry, so unable to see any way to take out their frustrations, when a dictatorial person arises in that, fascism is very, very close. And there was a piece perfectly describing this, was written by David Frum, who is a conservative, back in 2019. This is a little bit of what Frum wrote, quote, and it's about immigration. Quote, without immigration restrictions, there are no national borders. Without national borders, there are no nation states. Without nation states, there are no electorates. Without electorates, there is no democracy. If liberals insist that only fascists will enforce borders, then voters will hire fascists to do the job liberals refuse to do. End quote, David Frum. Now, Frum is a conservative ideologue. Yes, absolutely. A lot of things that he has written, I just found very off-putting for me and my little twisted liberal mind. But on the other hand, in this horrible age of the orange bastard over the past 8 years, I have come to realize something I should have realized a long time ago. And that is, there are a lot of so-called conservatives out there who write about and talk about and propose things that you and I, liberals, could agree with. Whoops. No, I'm not removing my little liberal hat. I'm not going to go around bareheaded. I'm just saying there are certain things that are said by real conservatives, just like I've talked so many times about real Christians, whom I respect. I'm not talking about the Christian fascists. I may not agree with the Christian religion, or Islam, or Judaism, or Hinduism, or any of it. But the people who practice these religions and practice them honestly and respectfully as a means of comfort and solace and what have you, sure, of course I respect that. And the Christian fascists that run this country now have none of that. But I digress. I feel the same way about real conservatives. You know, I grew up in an era when liberals and conservatives were so close together, it was very difficult to tell them apart. I was taught by my entrepreneurial grandfather, who spoke broken English, that conservatives, the Republican Party, represented the party of opening your own business, which is what he did. Getting started in this country, which is what he did. Reasonable taxation. Restrictions that weren't stifling to people opening up a business. Those are the things my grandfather used to tell me. Why? Because I asked him when I got a little bit older, why are you a Republican? When my mom, your daughter, is not. She's a liberal. And my grandfather tried to explain it to me. And what he said made sense. I could accept his being a Republican in the same way I could respect his wife, my grandma, being a Christian. Because the way they explained it and the way they lived their lives was indicative to me that they believed this stuff they believed in, whether it was conservative Republican politics or Christianity. They believed it and they lived it without bearing any ill will to anybody else. They didn't hate the Jews. They didn't hate the Muslims. They didn't hate the liberals. They didn't hate union organizers. They just went about their lives. So, what David Frum wrote, let me repeat it because I think it bears repeating. Without immigration restrictions, there are no national borders. Without national borders, there are no nation states. Without nation states, there are no electorates. And without electorates, there is no democracy. If liberals insist that only fascists will enforce borders, then voters will hire fascists to do the job liberals refuse to do. Oy. Now, Steve Schmidt, whose column I found this in, he also said, let's be clear about something else as well. Only a morally degenerate people would allow themselves to be captured by fascists in an election where the fascists are perfectly clear about what is coming. And if anything, this orange bastard has made it very clear what his plans are when he is reelected. There's no doubt. He keeps saying it over and over. And there's one thing about Trump. He is an evil son of a bitch who has emerged out of the depths of some kind of fictional hell, but he always tells you what he's going to do, and then he does it. And it's all evil and rotten and filthy, but he still does it. Please don't assume, and I know you don't, I'm just talking. Please don't assume that Trump is a conservative. He is a fascist. Now, there haven't been, and there will be, no shortage of warnings about this catastrophe that's right in front of us. We're a year away from it. In fact, as Steve Schmidt puts it, those warnings will likely become evidence in whatever revenge plot will be inflicted against those who spoke out against Trump and the danger ahead. So, when Trump talks about what he's going to do for revenge or retribution or getting even, and the brain-dead assholes who cheer him on at these rallies, when he says that stuff, he means it. But what we're dealing with right now, and you know this as well as I do, there is a huge absence of what my grandparents, or maybe in your family, maybe you still refer to this, the term character. If you have good character, right? There's a term from the ancient past, at least 70, 80 years ago, right? Is he of good character? That was always one of the first questions when you brought home a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a chum or somebody. Is he of good character? Is he a good kid? But there is an absence of character in this age. You know this. All you have to do is look around. Look at the anti-Semitism. Look at the the Islamophobia. Look at the mass killings in this country. Look at all of it. Look at the fucking greed that makes the 80s look like a peaceful period when everybody believed in equality in the marketplace. I mean, the greed and the insanity that is out there now is insatiable. Look at the fact that the leaders of the countries, whether they're business or political, will do nothing to curb global warming. So the point that Steve Schmidt makes is that the absence of character now in our age will extinguish American liberty every bit as much as Trump's madness. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.